Hello, welcome to Web of Stories. My name is Melinda. I am filming this on Tuesday, July 23rd, but you are seeing it on August 1st after the results for the semifinals round of the Booktube prize have been announced. I'm going to time this for, I think, 10 a.m. because I think he does it at 9 a.m. So I participated this round and I wanted to go over my personal rankings. And this was a hard one to rank and we'll get to why. But I was in nonfiction semifinal group A. And before I get into this, you know, I didn't do the second round. I didn't do the quarterfinal round, but I did the octafinal round, which was interesting because there were books that I did not like in that round. Like, this one, the lowest rating I gave a book with, lowest grade I gave a book was a B. So these were all good books and it does get very difficult, but let me start and I'll start from number 6 and go to number 1. So number 6 was a little bit of a surprise, and that might be part of why it was in number 6, because I think that there was some hype around it. And that's Doppelganger by Naomi Klein. I actually started this the day I learned it won the women's prize. So I did have good expectations going into it, and I gave it a B, so I didn't dislike it. I very much agreed with her message of this book, and the idea of the mirror world and the people who see world diff. I very much agreed with it, and I thought a lot of what she said was interesting. But I had two really big issues with this book. One is I didn't really feel like the whole idea of doppelganger with her and Naomi Wolf, I didn't feel that worked as a messenger for her message, if that makes sense. I felt like that really would only go so far, and she tried to take it farther than it did. So that wasn't very successful for me. It started to get very annoying. She kept talking about Naomi Wolf, and I'm like, okay, I get it. That would have been a great jumping off point, but I didn't need it as the plate on which you serve the meal. Second problem, as much as I agreed with her message, I felt that she cast far too wide a net. She covered every possible aspect that she could with this. And it's not that she went into areas that didn't have merit for this discussion, but by hitting every possible topic, she watered things down quite a bit. I mean, it seemed to me very watered down. Like, there were some things I think that she really should have spent a lot more time on than not more time, but they should have seemed more important than they did. Sorry, I keep getting text messages. like, stop. Anyway, so far too wide a net. And I found that very frustrating. So as much as I agreed with what she said, my overall feeling once I finished it was very frustrated. Okay, book number 5 was Wifedom by Anna Funder. So this is about George Orwell's wife. And I gave this one a B+ as a grade. B+ is a great grade. And I thought this was a very interesting book. Now, as far as my knowledge with George Orwell, I've read Animal Farm. That's as far as I've gone. And after reading this book, that probably is going to be as far as I go, because he does not come off well at all in this book. But this book's not about him. It's about his wife, and really how his wife has been kind of erased from his story, even though she was such a vital part of it. And there were things that Funder did which I thought were really smart. She would refer things back to her own life and give us examples from her own life, which I thought was very powerful. She also didn't shy away from looking at previous biographies about George Orwell and criticizing them for when they did leave his wife out of the book. And I thought that was very important. Now, I just really had one issue with this book, and it's kind of a weird, silly issue, but it really bothered me. In one of her criticisms of previous biographies, she talks about reading something and thinking, how could this biographer have known that? It was a conversation that was never recorded, that they report as if it were fact. That is a valid criticism. In fact, I frequently, when I'm reading biographies, especially, obviously biographies, I'm like, how does this person know that? There's no record of it. You're guessing. You might even be an educated guess as to what they said, but it's still a guess. And you can't present that as fact. And so she calls out an author for doing that, which is appropriate. But then she also does this thing where she kind of inserts these passages that are almost like fictional takes on what's going on through Mrs. Orwell's eyes, which was weird, and it didn't really fit with the book, but also was exactly what she criticized that other author for. Very weird. I did kind of feel like what she really wanted to write was historical fiction about this woman, but we got a book, and I learned a lot. I know a lot more than I ever wanted to about George Orwell now. But yeah, so that was my issue with that. And this comes to the hard part of this ranking, because I now have 4 books left. I have to rank these 4 books, and I can only vote for 3 to go on. And the problem is all 4 of these books got 5 stars. I am not a big 5-star giver, because a 5 star is like above an A+ for me. These are books that I'm like, this is an all-time favorite book, is basically what it is. And there's 4 of them. And I have to rank them. So clearly I cannot rank them on preference, because they're all 4 are all-time favorite books, right? So I had to kind of think about, how can I rank these? What is a criteria I can use to rank these books? And I kind of decided to go on like, what book most impacted my thinking? Either changing the way I thought or clarified the way I thought, anything like that, but it made an impact on my thinking. So as I go forward with this, again, these are all 5-star books. I am not at all ranking them in order of my personal preference or quality. I'm ranking them on an impact that it had on my thinking. So number 4, and this is the one that unfortunately I have to vote not to go through, is How to Say Babylon by Safia Sinclair. Maybe it's Sophia Sinclair. I always said Safia Sinclair, but then at the women's prize I said Sophia, so I don't know. I probably should have looked that up, but I have heard both. This was such a moving memoir. I just was taken in by her story and her writing and was very moved by it. But at the end of the day, it is a memoir, and for that, it is fantastic. But did it change how I saw things? No, it really didn't. I learned a lot. I learned about the Rastafarian culture, but it didn't change how I see the world or impact how I see the world really in any way, which is the only reason why it's in number 4th place. Okay. Number 3. And this was my number 1 from the Octafinals, and that's King: A Life by Jonathan Eig. This is the massive new biography of Martin Luther King. And this did impact how I see the world. And if I've done a standalone review of it, and I'll link it down below. But basically to not go into my whole story, I had heard things growing up about Martin Luther King from my parents, conservative parents, that were not good. And the 2 things they always accused him of was being a communist and being a womanizer. And this biography has come out at this time because documents have been released, been unclassified, I guess, about him, so that we have more information. He was not a communist, he was anti-communist, but he was a womanizer, big time. And so he's a very problematic person in that way. So yes, he is problematic. Not just in all the ways my parents thought he was. And Jonathan Eig does such a great job of relaying all this information. And he doesn't, except for one sentence in the epilogue, he never puts his own feelings out. And that one sentence, I can't even remember what the sentence was, but it was, my feeling about it is like, yes, we have to see him as a human, and we can recognize all the good that he did in the world, and that is very, very important. And while the bad doesn't negate the good, it still needs to be there with it. And it had, it's really like, yes, I guess it kind of changed how I thought about Martin Luther King specifically, but just in the way I look at public figures. It gave me a way to sort of have those 2 opinions about public figures in my life. Now, obviously, there are some people where the bad does outweigh the good. But a lot of times it is a case you have to look at the good and the bad. And and put them together. And that really solidified that for me. So I'm putting that in number 3. Okay, number 2 is a book I did not think I'd like because it's a science book, and I am a history, social studies sort of person. I'm not a science person, but gosh darn it, this book sucked me in. And it's Eve by Kat Bohannon, and I didn't write down on my little sheet the full title, but it's like how women's bodies push or shape 200 million years of human evolution. So first of all, science book, not a science person. This was very accessible. I did do this on audio. She narrates it. She does a great job. It's very easy to understand the science the way she presents it, and I really appreciated that. And I say that I did it on audio because it actually should have been harder for me to understand it on audio because I'm not seeing it. I had no problem. But it also changed, we've all been told things scientifically about how men are stronger. I mean, I have this fight all the time with my husband. Men are stronger and women are weaker and all this. And she throws that all out the window with actual fact and science and research. And yes, we're always discovering new things and theories change. Yes. But we've also, there has been a level of misogyny that has always been in this field, and she really peels that back. And not only was this interesting, I also found it very empowering, and it gave me a way of looking at the world that I have never really been given, because I have been, grown up with that. Women are the, the men were the hunters, the women were the gatherers, this sort of thing. And we needed men to protect us, and but no, we had a very evolutionary, very, very important role, and she outlines exactly what it is. And for a science book, I could not wait to get back to this audiobook, which says so much. And I want to recommend it to everyone because it's a 5-star book, but I know people are like, oh, that sounds kind of sciencey. But it's like, and I don't want to diminish it by saying it's like easy science, because it's not. It's just presented so well that someone like me, who did everything she could to get out of science class, could understand it without a problem. I am very glad I listened to this on audio and that I got it through Libro so that I own it, so that maybe on a road trip I can sneak it in and have my husband listen to it. There you go. Okay, so that leaves number 1. My number 1 book from this round is an interesting book because it's at the end. It didn't change my thinking, it clarified my thinking. But I didn't expect it to, given what it was, and that's A Fever in the Heartland by Timothy Egan. So this is historical. This is history about the rise of the Ku Klux Klan in the Midwest, specifically Indiana, in the 1920s. Now, I say specifically Indiana. The story, the action that he goes through, that he's telling, is in Indiana, but he relates to things that happened in other parts of the country. And I say that because in Oregon, we're a blue state. We like to say we're very liberal and everything, but we have a very dark history of racism, including in playing in big part the KKK, and he does touch on that to the level that is appropriate, that it doesn't take away from his main story. So the story is how the KKK rose, how it stayed in power, and how it fell. And I don't want to get too much into details because I actually want you to read this because it's very interesting. It is a very interesting story, but what got me is I realized pretty quickly, I should say on this one too, I listened to this, it was narrated by the author, who also does an excellent job, but I happened to be listening to this during the Trump trial in New York. There's a lot of courtroom stuff in this, and so there was that. But I realized, we can look back at this and say, oh, and then 100 years ago, this was really bad, and this bad thing was happening in Indiana with all these people in these white hoods and everything. And then I realized you take off their white hoods and you give them red caps, and it's the exact same thing that's going on right now. We are not any better than we were 100 years ago. As I said, it's just red caps and women's health rights, and women's reproductive, women's bodily autonomy, instead of white robes and racism, although there's still racism there too. And it showed a lot about human nature and how people fall for this and how this movement kept going, but it also offered a little bit of hope in that it did come to an end. And I really appreciated that, trust me. And like Jonathan Eig and King, Timothy Egan does an excellent job of keeping his own opinions out of it until the epilogue where he says, look, if you haven't figured, but he doesn't say this. This is a paraphrase, big paraphrase. This is like what's going on now. Didn't pick up on that? Now I have a lot of family that is red. I used to always say that I wasn't the black sheep of the family. I was the left sheep of the family. And to see how my relatives evolved into this, and to see that echoed back in this book from something that happened 100 years ago was terrifying. So yeah, this is a book I really think is, all the 5-star books, read them. But this is the one I think needs to be read now, right now. If you haven't read it, go get yourself a copy, get an audiobook. The audiobook is great. Get the print book if you want, probably has pictures. So if you like, get it and read it, because it is very, very important for what's going on right now in our world. So there you go. Those are my rankings. Now, as I said, I'm doing this a week ago from when you've seen it, so I don't know which ones go through. We'll see. I did sign up for doing the final round, so we'll see what I end up with that. Everyone who signed up for the final round, you could only sign up for the final round if you did a previous round, but everyone who signed up got into it, so I know I'll be doing it. So it'll be interesting to see what books I'm given. I shouldn't say that. Everyone's given the same books. Excuse me. I'll see which books I am given that end up, because everyone gets the same books. But yeah, the Booktube prize, by the way, has been a lot of fun. I'm really glad that I have done it. If I had my own way, I would have done every round. I chose not to do the second round because I was feeling a little fried the first round because, and this was bad planning on my part, I didn't realize that I would have less time to read the books because of spring break. So I'm definitely going to do this again next year, but I'm probably not going to do the first round just for that reason. I'll probably come in on the second round. But yeah, so we'll see what books I'm going to be reading this next time. But yeah, as I said, 4 5-star books, and I recommend them all. In fact, I recommend all these books. I think they're all of them have value, and all of them are worth reading. So thank you very much. Let me know what you thought of any of these books if you read them, and if you have any pick for which ones you think hope win the big prize, let me know down below. Thank you so much. Like, subscribe, join my Discord, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.